What are you most afraid of? If you're brave enough to look at the darkest parts of who you are, that's where you'll find your inner gold. It's one of Carl Jung's most powerful insights, and it's the essence of shadow work. If I could choose one movie that captures just how important this is, it would be Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan, the story of a young dancer in the ballet Swan Lake. It's an allegory for facing the shadow, the duality of human nature, and what it means to bring these parts of ourselves together. We'll look at what this movie can teach us about understanding your shadow, and there will be spoilers ahead. This is Nina Sayers. She's a dancer in the New York City Ballet Company. Her life changes when she wins the lead role in the ballet Swan Lake. In the original Swan Lake story, an evil sorcerer named Rothbard kidnaps the princess Odette. He casts a spell on her, turning her into a white swan so that no one will love her. But every night, at the enchanted lake, she turns back into her human self. One night, a prince comes to the lake, and in the moonlight, he sees the white swan Odette transforming into a beautiful woman. She tells him that the curse can only be broken if someone who has never loved before swears to love her forever. They dance, but as the morning comes, Odette transforms back into the white swan. The prince promises to come back the next evening to break the spell. But back at his palace, Rothbard uses another spell to make his own daughter Odile look exactly like Odette. She is the Black Swan, and as they dance, she tricks the prince into declaring his love for her instead. The prince chooses the wrong woman. And just then, Rothbard appears and shows the prince a vision of the real Odette, who's been waiting for him at the lake. Realizing his mistake, he rushes to find her, but it's too late. Odette stands at a cliff. Rather than suffer the fate of being trapped as a swan forever, she throws herself off and ends her own life. Odette dies, but she ascends to the heavens, and the spell is broken. In many ways, Odette and Nina both share a similar journey. In the opening shot of the movie, Nina is in a dream world. She stands in the shadows lit by a single beam of light. A dark figure walks up to her, but as she tries to get away, he changes into a demon. He's the sorcerer Rothbard. He uses his magic to turn Nina into the white swan. Nina wakes up and realizes it was all a dream, but it's a powerful omen, and it foreshadows the fact that she will win the lead role in the Swan Lake Ballet. This scene sets up the dreamlike tone for the film, but it also symbolizes the fact that she's unconscious of some of the most important realities of her being, and they're only now beginning to come to the surface. Nina's room is decorated like a child's, and yet she's a 28-year-old woman. Her mother, Erica, still dresses her and cuts her nails. "I can do this myself," Nina says. But her mother ignores her and does it anyway. Shy, unassuming, and anxious, it's as if something's blocked Nina from the normal process of growing up. Carl Jung wrote that the wildest and most moving dramas are not played in the theater, but in the hearts of ordinary men and women who pass by without exciting attention, and for whom you'd never guess at the conflicts that rage within them. It's a kind of conflict found in every human being. Why? If you imagine what you were like in the earliest years of your life, you were free to express every part of who you are. But soon, you were taught to divide the world into what's socially acceptable and what isn't. We're taught that certain parts of us are shameful and wrong. These are the parts we reject and learn to hide in what Jung called the shadow. And so we repress it and push it away, deep into the subconscious mind. At the same time, we're also taught to present a good face to the world so we can feel safe, accepted, and loved. It becomes the social mask we wear when we deal with other people. Jung called this the persona. This process of social conditioning happens naturally in everyone. It's a necessary part of ego development, but it means that we lose our sense of wholeness. We divide ourselves into an ego and a shadow, and we only allow ourselves to live out one half of this dual nature, while the other half is hidden away. In Black Swan, we see how Nina builds her persona. Her whole identity is tied to being a ballet dancer, never making a mistake. She's constantly trying to please everyone around her. In order to become the quintessential good girl, she forces herself to live up to an impossible ideal, denying huge parts of her personality. And so she spends all her time practicing, with no friends, no romantic relationship. When Nina has a meeting with the ballet director Thomas, he tells her that, "When I look at you, all I see is the white swan, You're beautiful, fearful, and fragile. But the Black Swan, it's a really hard job to dance both. You're so obsessed with trying to get every move right. But I never see you lose yourself, ever. All that discipline, for what? It takes a huge amount of energy to repress the shadow and to bury all of our uncomfortable feelings to avoid facing them. If we do, we pay the price by sacrificing our authenticity. We lose our sense of liveliness and joy. And yet, stored within the shadow is the potential for enormous power and vitality. Many of the things we've left behind in our childhood, our greatest gifts, are hidden somewhere within the shadow. In Nina's case, we see how the unconscious patterns in her home are passed down from one generation to another in what's called the family shadow. As children, many of us grow up in homes where adults hide their secret worries, inner demons, and unfulfilled wishes. But the more they try to hide it, the stronger it becomes. All of it casts a shadow onto the next generation. Children absorb these elements like a sponge, even if no one speaks them out loud. In Black Swan, we see how Nina carries the burden of her family shadow. We learn that her mother Erica was once a ballet dancer as well, but she had to give it all up when she became pregnant with Nina. As a single mother who raised her daughter alone, her shadow carried the message that men aren't to be trusted, that the world is a hostile place, and your mother is the only one who can protect you. On a conscious level, Erica's proud of her daughter's success, but on an unconscious level, she's jealous of her daughter's talent and growing career. When Nina wins the lead role in Swan Lake, Erica buys her a huge cake to celebrate. But as a former dancer herself, she must know how this would sabotage Nina's preparation. When she tries to refuse the cake, Erica threatens to throw it out. So we can see how Nina feels the constant pressure to please her mother. This becomes an unconscious pattern between them because Erica regrets her own unlived life. She becomes overbearing, and since she lives so little of her own potential, she feels the need to live through her daughter. The tragedy is that Nina feels the burden of having to carry two lives, her own life and the unlived life of her mother. It's for this reason that Nina comes to feel responsible for her mother's happiness. Much like Odette, who's trapped in the body of a swan, Nina is trapped in the persona of the obedient daughter. Neither of them can live an authentic life. Neither of them are free. The danger for Nina is that she's hidden so much of herself away that her shadow is now starting to come to the surface. We see signs of this when, on the subway, she spots someone you'd swear looks just like her. And at night, when she walks down a narrow street, she passes by a woman who looks like her exact double. These are all clues that her shadow is beginning to take hold. But why does this happen? The Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson says that we can imagine the psyche as a seesaw, where one side represents the subconscious shadow and the other side represents the ego. We know that our culture conditions us to hide the parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of, but we can't get rid of it completely. We can only move it towards the shadow side. Things like aggression, envy, resentment, all of it gets pushed into the subconscious mind. At the same time, all of the things that we're proud of, things like status and reputation, stay visible on the ego side. Each side of the seesaw must balance for you to have inner harmony. If you upset this balance, if you push too much of yourself into the subconscious, the seesaw flips and the shadow takes over. Once this balance is lost, the shadow is unleashed, and it acts out in all kinds of damaging ways. This is what happens to Nina. As her shadow takes control, she becomes more and more rebellious. The night before an important rehearsal, she decides to go for drinks at a bar, something she would never normally do. Her mother tries to stop her, but Nina shuts her out. Intoxicated with the feeling of freedom she's never had, she lets loose and parties into the late hours of the night. When she gets home, her mother's waiting. "You're not my Nina right now. What happened to my sweet girl?" Nina spirals out of control. She goes into her mother's room, where the paintings seem to come alive. It's a harrowing experience. And back in her own room, her shadow takes hold, and there's a surreal scene where she transforms into a black swan. But did it really happen? Or was it all in her mind? The only way to resolve this is to bring the seesaw back into balance. To accomplish this, we have to move the unconscious parts of the shadow from one side of the seesaw to the other. In other words, we have to become consciously aware of them. If we don't, then we're doomed to repeat the same patterns over and over again. Because until we make the unconscious conscious, It will drive all our behavior, and we will call it fate. Because we live in such a divisive either-or culture, most people flip back and forth on the seesaw, from one extreme to the other, from shadow to ego and back again, never finding inner peace. To break this cycle, you have to hold what Jung called the tension of the opposites, to understand that the ego and the shadow both come from the same source. In the same way that light can't exist without darkness, one can't exist without the other. To know and embrace both sides of ourselves, even the things we most despise, is a crucial step in our development. It's also something that's long been understood in many traditions like Taoism, because all of nature lives in duality, in cycles of creation and destruction, birth and rebirth, light and shadow. Bringing our opposites together in balance is the key to living an integrated life. It's the basis of Jung's clinical work. Through a process he called individuation, we bring together all of the elements that make us who we really are. So how do we do that? Shadow work is the conscious process of reclaiming the things we've rejected in ourselves, facing the illusions we've lived by so we can let them go. There are no easy answers. Each person must find their own way to confront their shadow, and no two journeys will be exactly the same. That said, I'll share some guidelines that you can use to incorporate into your own shadow work. First, identify your shadow projections. Shadow projection happens when we look at other people and see within them the very things we most want to deny in ourselves. It's all the qualities we attribute to other people which, in reality, we're unconscious of in our own nature. When we project our qualities onto others, it's like looking into a distorted mirror. It's the things we don't accept about ourselves that we see reflected back at us. It's no accident then that mirrors are a huge symbol we see over and over again in Black Swan. Mirrors are an essential tool in ballet, where dancers spend countless hours looking at their own reflections as they practice. It's in the mirror that they see the ideal versions of themselves, but it also shows them their flaws. In Black Swan, when Nina's shadow takes over, her own reflection takes on a life of its own. It's unsettling because we expect the things we see in a mirror to be accurate. And yet, our projections are false. They're distortions of reality. There's a scene where Nina watches a new dancer in the ballet company. Her name is Lily. The director Thomas says, "Watch the way she moves. Imprecise but effortless. She's not faking it." Lily naturally embodies all of the qualities of the Black Swan. She's bold, brash, and confident in all of the ways that Nina is not. And yet, these are all of the things that Nina will have to tap into if she wants to dance the Black Swan. We can see that Nina is threatened by Lily, but she also admires her. She doesn't realize that she has all of these same qualities in herself. These are the things she's repressed in her shadow. Over time, Nina becomes more anxious and paranoid. In the same way that the evil twin Odile replaces Odette by stealing the prince in Swan Lake, Nina becomes convinced that Lily is trying to steal her role and replace her in the ballet. The problem is, although we see things from Nina's point of view, it's become clear that she's losing touch with reality. Her projections distort everything she sees. This is one of the hardest things about shadow work. How do we know when we're projecting? A good guideline is that if something informs you, you're probably not projecting. But if something affects you emotionally, then you probably are. For example, let's say you meet a student who's never late and always shows up 5 minutes before class. If you use that information to form the opinion that she's dependable and punctual, then that's something that informs you, so you're not projecting. But if that same student makes you annoyed and you can't understand why, then it's a clue that you're probably projecting. Something about your shadow is being activated in this overly emotional reaction. The things we see in other people are accurate only if they inform us, but if they strongly provoke an emotional reaction, then it's almost certainly projection. A good practice is to keep a journal where you make a note of any strong emotional reactions you have throughout the day and reflect on why it made you feel that way. For example, if you suddenly feel jealous of someone who's trying something new, that can be a clue that there's a similar part of your shadow that wants to be set free. Paying attention to our critical inner voice can also point to the shadow. We see how Nina harshly judges herself for every mistake she makes. She's a perfectionist and holds herself to impossibly high standards. In one scene, she tells Thomas, "I just want to be perfect." But it's an unattainable goal that only sets her up for failure. This is a common problem. When it happens, you can recognize that these thoughts aren't who you are, and you can answer that voice in a compassionate way. For example, the sentence, "I feel guilty," doesn't mean the same thing as "I am guilty." None of this defines us or makes us who we are, but the critical voice often tries to make broad judgments that really aren't true. By answering with kindness, you can accept yourself in a more balanced way. With time, you can listen beyond the inner critic and find the authentic voice within you that offers real guidance and intuitive support. At first, this inner voice speaks in whispers, but the more you tune into it, the more it will sound and feel right to you, and the more you can trust your own inner wisdom. You can also express your shadow creatively. This is something that artists do naturally. They reveal their shadow in ways that might otherwise be socially unacceptable, by painting it, writing a story about it, or making music. Through a symbolic act, you can give the shadow an outlet by turning it into something beautiful. At the heart of shadow work is recapturing that sense of play and curiosity we had as children. Ask yourself, how can you express your shadow in a creative way? Is there something that you loved to do as a child that you lost touch with? These are all ways of making the shadow more conscious in your life. It can give you clues to the unlived life inside you that's waiting to be expressed, bringing a completely new energy that you otherwise wouldn't have. There's one more mystery in Black Swan. In the final dance, Nina comes on stage and dances the role of Odette. She's graceful and elegant. The prince lifts her up and we see Lily dancing below. As she turns and looks back, Lily has transformed into Nina's exact double. Blinded by the stage lights, Nina falls to the floor. It's a terrible moment, and she tries to recover as best she can. She runs back to the dressing room to get ready for the next act. But there's an intruder. Lily is now sitting in her chair. "How about I dance the Black Swan for you," she says, as she changes into Nina's twin. They fight in the dressing room. "It's my turn," she says. "No, it's my turn." In their struggle, the mirror shatters and Lily is wounded by a broken piece of glass. Nina leaves her behind and her eyes become red, a sign that she's completely possessed by the shadow. She goes on stage to dance the Black Swan, but now she's completely transformed. Confident and menacing, she's filled with a powerful new energy. She embodies the Black Swan so completely, she seems to grow feathers as she moves. It's mesmerizing to watch. The audience cheers as she soaks in the applause. Nina heads back to her dressing room again to change. But when Lily comes to her door, we're surprised to see that Lily's completely fine. Lily compliments Nina on her dancing, and then she leaves. So who was she fighting with earlier? The horrifying realization dawns on her, and we realize the truth. She wasn't fighting Lily at all. She was fighting herself. What we saw was the inner conflict between Nina's ego and her shadow. It was the unlived life within her that was screaming, "It's my turn." All of the hostility and the jealousy she'd seen in other people were really just shadow projections coming from her own subconscious mind. And in that struggle, the only person she wounded was herself. Nina goes back on stage to dance the final act. With her mother watching in the crowd, she runs to the top of the platform, and just like Odette in Swan Lake, she jumps off. Time slows down, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Thomas rushes to her side. "What did you do?" "I felt it." "What?" "It was perfect." A crucial detail here is that the movie ends with everything fading to white. That's the opposite of the way most movies end, which is the usual fade to black. Black naturally signals closure, that things have come to an end. But the fade to white suggests the opposite. It implies a new beginning, a sense of illumination and transcendence. Even the word enlightenment has the word light in it. It tells us that by the end of the movie, she's awakened to a new understanding of who she is. For the first time, she's conscious to the truth of her nature. Understanding both the light and the shadow, she becomes whole. In the same way that Rothbard's spell turns Odette into a swan so that no one will love her, Nina's unconsciousness of her shadow is a spell that keeps her from being able to live an authentic life. But at the end of both stories, the spell is broken. They ascend to a higher plane and experience the divine. Colleen McCullough once wrote that there's a story, a legend about a bird which sings just once in its life. From the moment it leaves its nest, it searches for a thorn tree and never rests until it finds one. And then it sings, more sweetly than any creature on the face of the earth. In singing, it impales itself on the longest, sharpest thorn. But as it dies, it rises above its own agony to outsing the lark and the nightingale. It pays its life for just one song, but when it does, the whole world stills to listen. In the grand scheme of the universe, our lives begin and end in the blink of an eye. Each of us carries within us something beautiful that's calling to be set free, whether it's a creative work you've yet to make, or the love you give to your friends and family. It's all part of the dance of light and shadow that makes up our most precious moments. There's a line from Black Swan that didn't make it into the final movie. Thomas tells Nina that what we do is beautiful but fleeting. Dance is not immortalized like music, poetry, or art. It doesn't grow old in museums and churches. It lives for now, for this moment only, and this is your moment. There is so much more that could be said about this movie. What are your thoughts on Black Swan? Do you have any tips that have worked in your own shadow work? Let me know in the comments. I'd absolutely love it if you pressed the like button and left a comment with the swan emoji. As always, thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.